What's up, family? So, a man stands in the middle of a Trump rally wearing a shirt that says, "Kill your local pedo." Starts shouting something nobody could really make out, and within seconds, security's got him and a woman next to him walking out of the building. That happened Friday night in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it's just one piece of a rally that's got a lot more going on than people are talking about. Because this isn't just some local South Carolina story, family. This is a preview of 2026, and we're going to break down the protester. We're going to break down who Darlene Graham even is, and we're going to get into Caroline Leavitt stepping away from the White House and what all of it tells us about the midterms in November coming up. So hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. So picture this, right? Air Force One touches down. Trump comes off that plane, walks into the Myrtle Beach Convention Center to a crowd that's already roaring. Thousands of people packed in tight, and outside there's still a line wrapped around the building in triple-digit heat. That's the room we're talking about. That's the energy in the building before this man ever stood up. Now, around 7:30 that evening, mid-speech, this guy pops up out of his seat wearing that shirt, "Kill your local pedo," white letters on black, and he starts yelling. And according to the reporting, what he actually said wasn't clear, not to the cameras, not to a lot of people in that room, but it didn't matter because the second he stood up, security and convention staff were already moving, and it wasn't just him, it was a woman with him too. Both of them walked right out the door within what sounds like seconds. And family, that woman didn't just get walked out quiet. People in that crowd were yelling at her the whole way, and from what's being reported, she just caught as much heat from that room as the man in the shirt did. Two people, same exit, same amount of noise, following them out the door. And Trump, watching all this happen, doesn't skip a beat. He looks out at the crowd and says, "That's all right. That person's going home to mom, going to get scolded because mom is voting for us." Crowd loses it laughing. He adds, mom is on it, quote unquote, and just rolls right back into the speech like nothing happened. So these are the individuals that got walked out within that rally. That's the woman, as you can see. And then there's another clip in regards to the matter. This is the man. Getting him skirted out as well with the woman.
That's all right. That person's going home to mom, gonna get scolded because mom is voting for him.
And as you heard, President Trump said, they're going home to mom. Mom is going to scold them. Mom is on it, like I said. So there you have it, right? And this is also another version of that clip or within that incident that happened during the rally, which is more clear. I told them to get out of here, skedaddle, basically. So you guys get the point, right? And then you had an individual, this was the first Trump rally of their life. Now, speaking of this incident, to be fair, I know there's a read on this where people say the president of the United States, that's the president of the United States, he shouldn't be cracking jokes about a protester like that. That's beneath the office, right? I know there's a read on that. And look, I'm not going to pretend that opinion doesn't exist because it does. And for some people, that's a real line. They don't want cross regardless of who's speaking. But here's where it doesn't add up for me. A heckler stands up in the middle of somebody's wedding speech, right? And starts shouting. Nobody at that wedding is sitting there debating the heckler's message. They're watching how the groom handles it. Does he freeze up? Does he get rattled? Or does he crack a joke, keep his composure, and get right back to what he was saying? That's what the room actually remembers, family, not the heckler's words. The room remembers how the man at the front handled getting interrupted in front of everybody watching. And that's exactly what played out in Myrtle Beach, as you saw. And the protesters' message got drowned out in seconds. Nobody in that building or online is talking about what he was trying to say. They're talking about Trump's joke and how fast that crowd turned it into a laugh line instead of a moment of chaos. And think about it like this. A disruption tells you what one person thinks, but how thousands of people in that room respond to it, how fast security moves, how the guy at the podium handles it without losing his rhythm, That tells you something bigger about the room itself. And that's the real story sitting underneath this whole moment, family. Not the shirt, not the shouting. It's what it revealed about the crowd around it. Now, one guy, as you see on the screen, at the rally, his first time at Trump's rally, as I mentioned, Matt Van Swole made a point that stuck with me. He said this was his first Trump rally ever, and he watched thousands of people stand outside in 100-degree heat for hours just to get in the building. Not minutes, hours. And heat that makes most people cancel a trip to the grocery store. And family, that matters more than people want to admit, because if you think about it, anybody can show up to something free, air conditioned, and comfortable. That takes nothing. But you don't stand outside in triple digit heat for hours unless something in you actually wants to be there bad enough to sweat through it. That's not spectacle. That's commitment showing up in the most physical way possible. Now, here's where it gets interesting, right? Because for months, you had this narrative running on cable news and in a lot of these online columns that MAGA is losing steam. Enthusiasm gap, they call it. People moving on, the base getting tired, the excitement from 2024 drying up. That's been a story. But then you watch thousands of people melting in the sun just for a chance to get inside a building, and those two things don't match up. One of them's wrong, and I'll let you guess which one. Because if you think about it like this, say there's a restaurant in your neighborhood and online, people are leaving reviews saying the food's going downhill, nobody goes there anymore, it's done. But then you drive past it on a Friday night and there's a line out the door and down the block. Which one do you believe? The reviews on your phone or the line of actual human beings standing there with their own 2 feet? At some point, the line outside tells you more than the comment sections ever will, right? Now, to be fair, I'm not going to sit here and tell you a rally crowd is the same thing as a poll or an election result. It's not. Rally crowds show up because they're already fired up. That's the whole point of a rally. It's not a random sample of South Carolina. It's not scientific. And anybody who tells you a big crowd guarantees a big win in November is getting ahead of themselves. But here's the thing: energy without data isn't proof of anything. I'm not telling you it is. What it is, though, is a real data point. It's one piece of evidence sitting on the table next to everything else we're about to look at. And when you start stacking pieces of evidence next to each other, family, that's when a real picture starts to form. But this is Matt Van Swoll video of him being at Trump's rally for the first time ever. So there you have it, right? So then that brings us to our next clip of President Trump actually coming to South Carolina and getting off the Air Force One. So boom, there you have it. And then he's getting off the Air Force One. He has Darlene Graham at the rally in South Carolina. This is President Trump's announcement to basically announce and proclaim that he's getting ready to land in the great state of South Carolina, where he'll be doing a rally, which he has done in honor of Lindsey Graham for his fantastic sister, Darlene, who, after knowing her for many years, I asked to run for the United States Senate and take Lindsey's place. See you soon, President Donald J. Trump. And this was on Truth Social in regards of the day in which he actually went to South Carolina and held the rally, in which you saw with that disruptive protester. Right? So, now, before we get to Darlene Graham, I got to talk about the man standing right next to Trump on stage, right? And before we get to that, I figure I'll show you as he got on stage, President Trump, and the energy of the MAGA crowd in Myrtle Beach, right? Due to copyright purposes, I got to lower the volume due to copyright purposes, but you get the energy, right? The energy, the crowd is riled up. They're chanting USA. And this is the whole thing that debunks what the mainstream liberal media was telling you in regards of MAGA being dead, the base is drying up, nobody's supporting Trump as they want to make it seem as though it's not. But that's not true at all, because like I mentioned, you have individuals standing in 100-degree heat to get in this building that's packed out. You see individuals around him, surrounded around him in the stands Basically saying South Carolina uh, is Graham country, right? And referring to Lindsey Graham, who passed away. My heart goes to the family. And now Darlene Graham has to take his place, which is his sister. His sister, Lindsey Graham, actually adopted his own sister to take care of her. So that's honorable in itself and patriotic in itself. And my respects goes to him, and also thank him for his service as well. So now that we got that out the way, um, like I said, this brings me to talking about the man standing right next to Trump on that stage. Because if you don't follow South Carolina politics, you might not know why the crowd went up the way it did when he grabbed the mic. And that's Senator Tim Scott, as you see on the screen. South Carolina's other sitting senator. And in plain English, that means he's already one of the 100 people in this country who votes on the laws that touches your taxes, your job, your everyday life. He's not some random guy invited up for a photo. He's a sitting United States senator, flanked right there next to the president. And Tim Scott didn't come up there to be quiet. He looked out at the crowd and asked, "Is this Donald J. Trump country?" And the place lost it. Thousands of hands going up, people screaming back at him. He kept going, listing off exactly why. He said they love a president who closes the border. He said they love a president who cuts their taxes. And he said they love a president who keeps America safe. Now, think about it like this, family. When a sitting senator stands next to a president and starts naming Pacific policies, borders, taxes, safety, that's not just hype for the cameras. That's a senator telling you exactly what he thinks is working in front of the exact people who will decide whether he still has a job come election season. So now I want you guys to hear for yourself.
South Carolina, Donald J. Trump country. Oh, now this is South Carolina. And when we say we love President Trump, we say it loud and we say it proud. Is this Donald Trump country? Oh, yeah. We love a president who closes our borders. We love a president who cuts our taxes. And we love a president who keeps Americans safe.
There you have it. A phenomenal entrance. How could you be mad at that? It's facts. Without secure borders, you don't have a country. Now let's shift gears, family, because Trump also brought somebody else up on that stage. And if you don't follow White House politics, you might not even know why this matters. Right? And this is Caroline Leavitt, has been serving as White House press secretary, which in plain English means she's the one standing at that podium every day taking questions from reporters and speaking for the administration when the cameras are rolling. That's the job. You mess up a sentence in that role, and it's a headline by lunchtime. And here's what actually happened with her. She had her second child back in May, and then on August 12th, she announced she was stepping away from that podium to spend more time with her family because she's not disappearing from politics. She's headed to MAGA Inc. or MAGA Incorporation, which is Trump's super PAC. And she'll be traveling with him heading into the RNC's midterm convention in September, Republican National Committee. Now, real quick, let's define that term because I know it gets thrown around a lot. A super PAC, in simple terms, is an organization that raises money to support candidates and push a political message, but it operates outside the campaign itself. So think of it like a booster club for a team. The booster club isn't on the field playing, but it's raising money and rallying support to help that team win. So on that stage in Myrtle Beach, Leavitt gets up and thanks Trump, calls serving as his press secretary the honor of her life, and then she does something interesting. She turns to the crowd and starts talking about how hard this man works. She's talking about how him picking up the phone at 3 in the morning, 6 in the morning for Republicans and Democrats both, because according to her, he's looking out for everybody. And then she closes with the real point. He needs a Republican Congress for the next 2 years to keep the country moving forward, so get out and vote. Now, to be fair, family, I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Of course, she's saying that. She's about to go work for his super PAC. That's not some independent observer giving you an honest take. That's a political operative doing exactly what a political operative get paid to do. And honestly, that's a fair point. Nobody should pretend her speech was some neutral analysis, but here's where it still matters. Even if you strip away all the loyalty and the polish, the framing she's putting out there tells you exactly what the campaign wants voters thinking about heading into the midterms. It's not about any single piece of legislation. It's about work ethic and it's about turnout. That's the message they're choosing to push right there on that stage in front of thousands of people. And that's the real signal buried in this move. When your press secretary steps away from taking questions from reporters and goes straight into a super PAC built to win elections, that tells you where the administration's attention is turning. It's not focused on the daily news cycle anymore. It's focused on November. And it's focused on keeping that Congress red, and which we need so we can actually pass legislation to actually back the policies in which our President Trump has been championing and campaigning on to actually be executed, because he can't do it himself, which is why our founding fathers made the separation of powers in the first place. No matter how you like it, our president champions and lobbies our best interests, but where the real things take place and get implemented and passed, as we know, is in the Senate.
Hello, South Carolina. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. President. You didn't need to bring me up on stage, though I do love a good podium. And I just want to say, President Trump, you are the most consequential and historic president in the history of our great country. And it has been the honor of my life to serve as your White House press secretary, sir. It really has. And I just want to let everyone in this room know how hard this man works for all of you and for every American across the country. Regardless of whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, you call this man at 6 in the morning, you call him at 3 in the morning, he picks up the phone because he's looking out for you. And he needs your help with a Republican Congress for the next 2 years so he can make our country greater and stronger and wealthier than ever before. So get out and vote. Thank you.
There you have it. And what she's always done phenomenal in, being straightforward, getting straight to the point, and doing her thing and executing the message and actually giving it to you direct. No spin, no narrative, just receipts. And what she's done phenomenal in being historical and being the youngest White House press secretary in history.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the militant parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. Raquel. That is based in the Middle East. That's what these...
Secretary Hegseth was complaining that it was front page news about these 6 service members who were killed.
That's not what the secretary said, Caitlin, and that's not what the secretary meant, and you know it. You know you are being disingenuous. There is not... We've never had a Secretary of Defense. Who cares more?
Drones get through or tragic things happen. It's front page news. I get it. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Yeah, as you know, we cover the deaths of U.S. service members under every president.
The press does only want to make the president look bad. That's a fact. Especially you. No, listen to me. Especially you and especially CNN. And the Secretary of Defense cares deeply about our war fighters and our men and women in uniform. He travels all across this country to meet with them, to connect with them, and your network has hardly ever probably reported on that. Why was Renee Good unfortunately and tragically killed?
Are you asking me my opinion? Because an ICE agent acted recklessly and killed her unjustifiably.
Oh, okay. So you're a biased reporter with a left-wing opinion.
What do you want me to do?
Yeah, because you're a left-wing hack. You're not a reporter. You're posing in this room as a journalist, and it's so clear by the premise of your question. And you and the people in the media who have such biases but fake like you're a journalist, you shouldn't even be sitting in that seat. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One on camera.
The only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet, and it is not working. I am I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to, and that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president made. His consent
is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out. Okay, Sean.
I call that truth and conviction. So you guys get the point within her top moments and being phenomenal as she is and was and still is, being part of the administration as an outside advisor. Now, here's a piece of that rally that didn't get near as much attention as the protester, but from my perspective, family, it might be the most telling moment of the whole night. Somebody on that stage brought up Trump accounts, right? And if you don't know what that is, let's define it in plain and simple. A Trump account is an investment account set up for kids, money that grows over time so that by the time they're adults, they got a real financial head start, not a government check, not a handout. An account that builds while they're growing up. And the reason that got real attention at this rally is because of who's out there talking it up. It's not just a Republican standing behind podiums saying this is a good idea. You got Gavin Newsom here, the governor of California, a man who spent years going after Trump. Just want to put that out there on basically everything. And he's out there publicly encouraging people to get one, actually, basically. And his own words were that he's enthusiastic, quote unquote, about it and think it's incredibly important. So sit with that for a second. Enthusiastic, incredibly important about a Trump policy. Now, think about it like this. Say you own a business and you got a rival down the street who spent years telling everybody your product isn't worth the money. Then one day the same rival gets in front of his own customers and quietly tells them, go get that other guy's product. It actually works. He's not doing a joint press conference with you. He's not putting your name on his sign out front, but he's still telling people to go use what you built because at the end of the day, it does what it says it does. That's a bigger compliment than any 5-star review because it's coming from somebody who had every reason to stay quiet about it. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to sit there and tell you Gavin Newsom just switched teams. He didn't wake up and become a Trump supporter. People can back one policy and still stand against the president on 10 other things, and that's normal. And as you see, your biggest hater could be your biggest supporter. And that's how real politics actually works, right? You can be on the other team or the other party, but still back one policy or policies that's reasonably common sense and can be agreed with from a bipartisan standpoint. Nobody agrees on everything, and Newsom pointing people toward a Trump account doesn't mean he's suddenly voting Republican in November, right? I'm not telling you that. I'm not asking you to believe that either. Most definitely not. But here's where it starts to matter. When your loudest critic starts quietly pointing his own people towards something you built, that tells you more than any press release the administration could ever put out. A press release is somebody patting themselves on the back. This is somebody who spent years attacking you, standing in front of a camera, telling regular families to go take advantage of what you made. That's not spin. Now, of course, you have every right to be suspicious or have some type of mindset of ambiguity or question why all of a sudden he's coming to this miraculous conclusion. And a lot of people will come to think, oh, because he may be the 2028 presidential candidate, or he is the 2028 presidential candidate that he is hoping to be and become and will become. And he's just not saying the quiet part out loud, but he's staying quiet about it. But in the name of saving face or changing face from so much damage and the way he was such a bad leader when it comes to governing California, as he still is the current governor of California. In the name of saving face, let me push for something and act more of bipartisan so then I can get swing voters to vote my way as I anticipate to become a 2028 presidential candidate. I wouldn't take that off of the board, right? I definitely wouldn't take that off of the board because it's a possibility, and more so of a possibility, and which why he's doing this, because if that's the case, he would have been supporting it when it first took place. Why all of a sudden now? So And then you can say that's a man doing the math on what actually helps people and deciding the politics wasn't worth getting in the way of it. But like I said, you wouldn't want to remove him saving face off the board, because if that's the case, his way of helping people would be helping Californians in the first place in his own state, instead of taxing them to death, to smithereens, and pushing them out of California, and also businesses, and also the hub of an important business like Tesla, where Elon Musk got up and took his business elsewhere to Texas to Texans. So now that tells you that you're really not business friendly. You don't care about your local your citizens in California, local Californians. And now all of a sudden you care about the next generation of kids, but you didn't care to keep families in California to raise their families and have, children, or grandkids, great grands, and etc. be able to have the ability and the opportunity to raise their families in the beauty of California. So how can you push for investing in California kids when you are crushing families to death in the name of taxation and pushing them out where they can't raise their families in the beautiful state of California? So it can be very contradicting. It is contradicting and very hypocritical based on his actions and the things that he had passed in California. So look, the real verdict is talk is cheap in politics. Everybody's got a press release. Everybody's got a talking point. But when the other side starts echoing your policy with their own mouth and their own voice without you even asking them to, that's the loudest confirmation you're going to get that something's actually working, right?
I'm enthusiastic about encouraging people to get a Trump account. I think it's incredibly important. It's one of the best things he's done. It's one of the best things Ted Cruz has done. It's one of the best things Cory Booker has done. That we're out there promoting. It's one of the best things Micron has done. It's one of the best things those folks that cannot be named that made those private contributions have done. It's direct, it's tangible, it's results oriented, it's not lost in bureaucracy. You can see it, taste it, feel it. You're making a difference directly to the next generation. You're giving them.
Well, the whole point why the Democrat Party was given so much adversity and so much backlash, because President Trump is not a typical politician, and he was never part of the bureaucratic norms in which these typical politicians are, and part of being a part of their own establishment, right? Saying one thing, doing another. So to make it as though shun it in a way, but also support it with that backhand comment of, oh, well, it's not a pure bureaucracy. You can smell it, taste it, feel it. Well, President Trump was never part of the bureaucratic bureaucracy that you stood for, and keeping the old guard things in place in the name of fraudulent actions and fraud and propping up your wife's nonprofit and enriching yourselves. So, mind you, he is part of the party, the Democrat Party, who takes advantage of the voters and say anything and will say or do anything to stay in power and just to win elections, but could care less about the American people. Facts.
Hope. And so we're here to encourage people to take advantage of this, to not fall prey to the politics or the cynicism or maybe even the fear that if I download a Trump account, somehow that means something. It doesn't. It just means something for your kid. It's not Trump's money. It's your child's money.
That man is something else. Download a Trump account, that doesn't mean nothing, but it does mean something. It means something for your kids. So it means something. What the hell are you talking about? Now let's zoom out, family, because everything we just talked about, the crowd and Caroline Leavitt, Newsom, all of it lives inside one bigger question. Why does South Carolina matter outside of South Carolina? And the answer is simple. South Carolina is a state that leans Republican, but it's not immune to shifts. And when a state like that starts showing you something, whether it's enthusiasm or doubt, that's usually a preview of what's coming in states that are a lot closer to even when you look at it. Now let's talk history for a second, because this matters. In plain English, the party that holds the White House almost always loses ground in the midterms. That's not opinion. That's a pattern that's played out over and over for decades. Voters get comfortable, some get frustrated, turnout for the president's own side tends to drop, and the other side shows up hungry. That's the normal script. But here's where it gets interesting, because a lot of Republicans are looking at nights like Myrtle Beach and saying this year doesn't feel normal. You don't get lines wrapped around a building in the heat if your side's demoralized. So there's a real tension here between what history says usually happens and what people are watching happen with their own eyes right now. And I know some of y'all are going to say, ignore the polls. They are all fake. They are all rigged. And look, I get where that skepticism comes from. Polls have been wrong before, and plenty of people watched 2016 and 2024 and walked away trusting their own gut over a headline. That skepticism is earned, not made up. But to be fair, throwing out every poll completely isn't a smart move either. Polls aren't perfect, but they're not nothing. Think about it like this. A poll is like a weather forecast. It doesn't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but it gives you a real sense of what direction things are leaning. And you don't ignore a forecast completely, but you also don't treat it like it's guaranteed. The smart move is holding both things in your head at once, the data and what you're actually seeing on the ground. And that's where the small business comparison comes back in. Because think about it, a smart business owner doesn't just read the online reviews and panic, and they don't just count the line outside and celebrate either. They watch both. They watch what people are saying, and they watch whether people are actually walking in and spending money. That's the full picture, and that's what we got to do here too. Now, here's another part of that picture. Because down in Florida, you had a Republican primary where Byron Donalds came out on top, which is phenomenal. You're beating out a field that includes James Fishback, who frankly was never really in a serious contention to begin with. Now, one primary in Florida doesn't prove a wave is coming, but when you start stacking that next to what happened in Myrtle Beach, next to Newsom quietly pointing people toward the Trump policy, you're starting to see a pattern show up across different states, not just one isolated moment in one room. And from my perspective, here's the honest verdict. No single rally decides an election. Nobody watching thousands of people cheer in South Carolina should walk away thinking November's already decided. But when you start lining up Myrtle Beach next to Florida, next to what Newsom's doing out in California, you're not looking at one data point anymore. You're looking at a pattern, and patterns are what actually tell you where an election is heading. Now, let's talk about the woman this whole rally was actually for, because a lot of people watching clips online don't even know her name. Darlene Graham is South Carolina's sitting senator, as you see on the screen. And she got that seat the hard way. Her brother, Lindsey Graham, held that seat for years. And when he passed away, Darlene stepped in and finished out the rest of his term. That's not a campaign win. That's a family stepping into a gap that grief left behind. But finishing somebody's term and keeping a seat are two different things. That's why she's in a Republican primary runoff against Congressman Ralph Norman this Tuesday. And whoever wins that runoff goes on to face Democrat Annie Andrews in November. So this isn't the final fight. This is the fight before the fight. And it's happening inside her own party. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because during a primary debate, Darlene admitted straight up that national security is not her area of expertise. And family, her opponents jumped on that fast. Critics came out saying she's not ready. She's not a real politician. She shouldn't even be in this race. And to be fair, I get why that lands hard for some voters. You're picking somebody to sit on committees dealing with real decisions about this country's safety, and hearing the candidate say, that's not my strong suit, is going to make people nervous. That's a fair reaction. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but watch how she answered it, because this is where it got real. She said, and I quote, "guilty as charged." And then pointed out that President Trump himself never held elected office before he became president, and she thinks he's done a damn good job. Now, whether you agree with that comparison or not, that's a bold answer. She didn't dodge it. She didn't hide behind a scripted talking point. She stood in front of a room full of critics and owned it. And from my perspective, that tells you something about her character, even if it doesn't answer every policy question. And here's the fair-minded part. Some voters are going to want a resume full of committee experience and years in office before they trust somebody with a Senate seat. And that's real valid standard to hold somebody to. But if you think about it like this, when you're hiring somebody for a job, sometimes you got two candidates in front of you. One's got the perfect resume, checked every box, worked the right jobs for the right years. The other's newer, doesn't have that same paper trail, but when you sit across from them, you can tell they got good judgment, they're honest about what they don't know, and they're willing to learn instead of faking it. A lot of good bosses will tell you character and judgment beat a resume line every single time, because you can teach somebody a skill, but you can't teach somebody to be honest when they're wrong. And that's the bet Darlene Graham is asking South Carolina Republicans to make on her. Not that she knows everything walking in, but that she'll be straight with people and grow into the job the same way plenty of senators before her had to. And that's exactly why this seat matters more than a single Senate race. This runoff is a real test of what South Carolina Republican voters actually value right now. Are they voting on resume, or are they voting on trust and alignment with the president? And whichever way Tuesday goes is going to tell you something about where this party's head is at heading into November, heading into 2026.
The critics say I shouldn't run for the Senate. They say I'm not a politician. You know what I say? Guilty as charged. And by the way, President Trump had never served in an elected office before, and I think he's done a damn good job. The critics say.
So there you have it, right? There you have it. Now let's bring this back down to your kitchen table, because you might be sitting here thinking, I don't live in South Carolina. Why do I care who wins the Senate runoff down here? Fair question. Here's the answer. A Senate seat isn't a local job. It's one of 100 votes that decides whether laws about your taxes, your grocery prices, your kids' future actually get passed, or whether they die in committee somewhere. Whoever wins that runoff on Tuesday, whoever wins in November, that person's vote counts the exact same as a senator from California or New York, and wherever you're watching this from. So when the balance of that chamber shifts, one seat in either direction, that shifts what's possible for the next 2 years, period. It's not abstract. It's rather a bill gets 51 votes or 49. Now, I know some of y'all are sitting here thinking I'm not political. I don't vote. I don't get into all of that. And look, I'm not here to lecture anybody, but I got to be honest with you. Sitting out doesn't remove you from the outcome. It just means somebody else decided it for you. Say your family's trying to decide where to eat on Friday night and everybody's supposed to throw in their pick. You decide you don't feel like voting, so you just sit there quiet. Well, the family still picks a restaurant. They still go eat. The only difference is now you're sitting in the car complaining about the choice instead of having had a say in it. And that's what skipping an election looks like. The decision still gets made. You just handed your seat at the table to somebody else, and that's the point. Out of everything we just broke down, the crowd, Darlene Graham, Leavitt, Gavin Newsom, all of it, there's only one piece of this whole story that you personally control. You don't control the polls. You don't control what the media says. You control whether you show up and vote. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 23 says this: buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. That verse fits this whole thing perfectly, because think about how easy it would have been to just take the 5-second clip of that protester getting hauled out, or the 10-second clip of Newsom saying he's enthusiastic, and build your whole opinion off that alone. That's the cheap version of the story. The version somebody hands you for free because it's quick and it confirms whatever you already believed walking in. But buying the truth means something different. It means you actually sit with the full quote, the full context, why Leavitt's really leaving, why Darlene Graham said guilty as charged, quote unquote, what Tim Scott was actually pointing to when he named borders and taxes and safety. That costs you something. It costs you time. It costs you the comfort of just believing the easy headline. And once you pay that cost and you actually know the truth, the verse says don't sell it back, meaning don't trade it away just because somebody online makes the easy version sound more exciting or more shareable. Hold on to what you actually know, even when the simple narrative is sitting right there tempting you to grab it instead. And here's the non-spiritual version of it for my family who aren't spiritual. The life wisdom, the same lesson. Truth is almost never the free option. It's usually the slower option. The one that takes more digging and doesn't fit into a headline, but it's the one that actually holds up when somebody challenges you on it later. The cheap version feels good for about 5 minutes online and then falls apart the second somebody asks you a real follow-up question. So pay the cost now, do the digging now, because a person who actually knows what happened can't be talked out of it by the next viral clip that comes along. So I want to hear from you on this one. Drop it in the comments. You think this crowd energy in Myrtle Beach actually turns into real votes come November, or you think it's just noise that feels good in the moment and fades out by the time people get to the ballot box? Give me an honest read, not what you're hoping happens, what you actually believe is going to happen. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you next one. Peace.